During the Sheva Brachas, Chazal instituted very specific brachas that we give to the Chassan and Kala, and these brachas carry the gamut of the sweet, perfect life. Our wishes to the Chassan and Kala is that they have the perfect life, a life filled with joy, simcha, happiness, and all their needs met. One of the brachas is very specific. Sameach tisamach re'em ahuvim. Joy and happiness. Be happy. Be happy. Re'em ahuvim. You two who love each other, you beloved friends of one another, you should enjoy great happiness. Kesamechacha yitzircha b'gan edim mikedem. In the same manner that Hashem made happy Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. And the Meiri on the Gemara in Ksuvis, which this bracha comes from, explains that that's exactly what the bracha is. We wish the Chassan and Kala that you couple here should have the same joy, the same happiness as did Adam and Chava have when Hashem walked them down the chuppah. And while that's the bracha, and it's a nice concept, if you think about it, it's rather difficult to understand. And I'll explain to you why. If you can imagine the perfect life, if you could imagine the most exquisite, beautiful paradise garden, that was Gan Eden. And if you can imagine Adam HaRishon opening his eyes, brilliant, insightful, fully alert, fully aware, brilliant individual, and he recognizes Hashem, recognizes the purpose of creation, and he has wisdom that far exceeds the greatest wisdom of the Malachim. Every animal in creation recognizes Adam as the purpose of creation, recognizes Adam as the master of the earth. Malachim at his beck and call, angels to do his very bidding. There's no work for Adam HaRishon, all fruit right, ready. All he's to do is grow, accomplish. All he's to do is to be davik to Hashem, to cling to Hashem. And the Medrash is very clear that Hashem created the perfect world for Adam. Much like when you invite a guest, first you prepare the banquet, you cook the dishes, you set the table, you lay out everything perfectly. When it's all ready, that's when you usher in your guest. Hashem created a picture-perfect world. No pain, no suffering, no disease, nothing lacking. This was Gan Eden, the perfect place for the human race to begin and enjoy their world. At a certain point, Adam looks around and says, Zel umazeh. Everything that Hashem created is in balance. Everything is in perfect harmony. Every animal has its mate. I don't have an Ezer Kenegdi. At that point, he says to Hashem, where is my mate? And then Hashem creates for Adam the perfect match. The perfect woman, the perfect balance, equally brilliant, equally insightful, perfectly suited for Adam. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself walks down Adam and Chava to the chuppah. It's hard to envision the completeness, the happiness, knowing that you are the father and mother of humanity, knowing that your actions will shape the course of history, knowing that Hashem is right there. The sense of completeness and happiness is beyond description. So here's the question. We're not allowed to daven a tefillah shav. A empty, vain tefillah is forbidden. If I say, Hashem, this traffic, it's really annoying, please give me wings to fly. That's a tefillah shav. You're not allowed to daven for something that's either ridiculous or impossible. You're allowed and should ask for things that could be. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to ask Hashem to assist you and abed you. But you're not allowed to ask Hashem for things that can't possibly be. And it sounds like the bracha that we'll give the Chassan and Kala is a tefillah shav. You, Chassan and Kala, should have the same joy, the same happiness as did Adam and Chava. It's impossible. We're not living in Gan Eden. There's pain, there's suffering, there's hardship in our world. Yes, life is sweet. Yes, there are moments of bliss and joy. But the reality is there's a lot of work, a lot of toil. And this world that we live in now is bezeyas apecha tochalechem, and the klolos apply. The world that we live in is not Gan Eden. And there's no way that our chassan and kala under the chuppah could have the same joy, same happiness, same life as did Adam and Chava. And so the question is, how could this Gemara say that we give the chassan and kala such a bracha? It seems to be impossible. It sounds ludicrous. What's pshat in the Gemara? And I'd like to see if we could answer it this evening and get a better understanding as to what the Gemara is sharing with us. And to do that, let me begin with a mashal. The Chovos HaLevavos gives a parable. He says, imagine two brothers. These two brothers grow up in this most magnificent mansion, beautiful, palatial manor, servants at their beck and call, every need met, and everything is carefully crafted for their benefit, for their growth. One day these two brothers, about 15 years old, are having a conversation, and one brother says to his other, he says, you know, our father is so generous. Everything he does is for our benefit. The tutors, the special schedule, everything he does is because he's concerned for our growth. What a wonderful, magnanimous person our father is. His brother says back to him, no, I don't know about that. All this getting up at 6:30 jazz, this all-day school, and then running and all this good stuff. I don't know. I think the old geezer is into it for his own comfort. He knows that if we're good, if he looks good, I think he's in it for himself. What is the difference between the two brothers? The Chovos HaLevavos explains to us that one is adopted. You see, the boy who was adopted knows what it means to suffer. He knows what it means to be without. He knows what it means to sleep on the street and be freezing at night. And when this benefactor took him into his house, the boy who's adopted feels an unending sense of appreciation because he recognizes the good that's done to him. His brother was brought up in the lap of luxury. His brother enjoyed this palatial manner from the time that he opened his eyes as an infant, and he doesn't recognize the good. It's not that he doesn't appreciate it, he doesn't even see it. It's plain, it's regular, it's what he expects, and he doesn't even see the good. And this, I believe, is a very apt parable to us. We enjoy dramatic benefits, tremendous bracha that we don't even see, that we don't even recognize. We have hands with which to feel, legs with which to walk. We're healthy, by and large, vibrantly alive, and we don't even see it. And let me give you a mashal, the Mahad Davadome. Imagine a man who, at the age of 35, becomes blind. And for the next 10 years, he has to create a new life. Same life in the sense that he's still in this world, but different in the sense that now it's all dark. And he learns to do everything that he did as a sighted man, now as a blind man, and he recreates a life for himself. And he spends 10 years in this dark cave. After the long 10-year period, he hears about an experimental procedure that, if successful, might reconnect the optic nerve. He may regain his sight. If not successful, he may die. He consults with his physician, discusses it with his clergy, and decides to undergo the operation. He's wheeled into the operating room, put under anesthetic, goes through the long operation, and when he begins to come to, he's ready to find out how he'll spend the rest of his life, with sight or blinded. And he clutches his fist, readies himself for the moment, and nurse! The nurse comes running. I can't open my eyes. I can't. Relax. It takes 3 days for the sutures to heal. He waits those 3 days, very, very long 3 days. And finally, with the doctors at the foot of his bed, his nurse at his side, they pull off one bandage, they pull off a second. He opens his eyes and he sees colors, dimensions, objects, the faces of his loved ones who he hasn't seen in 10 years. He looks out the window and he sees a meadow, grass, clouds, trees. With tears in his eyes, he says, Doctor, what could I ever do to repay you for this magnificent gift of sight? That sensation, that person experienced, that moment, is something that we are supposed to experience on a regular basis. Every day in Shachris we say the bracha, Pokeach Ivrim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you give sight to to the blind. I open my eyes in the morning and my eyes function. I track, I see depth, colors, dimension. I have this magnificent gift of sight. What a bracha. But you see, if you don't recognize it as a bracha, if you don't appreciate it, it might as well not be there. Of course it's there, of course it is. But how many times do we take stock of the fact that we have hands, fingers that feel, legs that walk, I have mobility, I have fluid, flexible movement. I walk in a world that's so replete with wonders that were created specifically for my good. This is not the SHMUZ for it, but if you study the foods that we eat, the orange, the apple, the pineapple, the pear, and study the flavors, the aromas, the textures, and think about the fact that Hashem created that for one purpose, for our benefit, for our enjoyment. Food serves a very utilitarian function. It provides nutrition. Any other feature that you find in food is there for one reason, because Hashem wants us to enjoy it. The flavors, the aromas, the textures are there for one reason, is that we should bite into that apple, get that crunch, feel that sweet taste, and say, wow, that's magnificent. But how many times do we actually pay attention to the food that we eat? And if we do pay attention, it's only for the first bite. By the time it's the second bite or the third, we're gone. We're not even aware of what we're eating. We're not even there at all. And it's rather strange. You could see the most magnificent sights in the world. You could drive along the Palisades Parkway in the spring and see the trees blooming. You could see the ocean. You could see the sunrise and not be moved. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what's pshat? What's wrong with me? Why don't I taste the food I eat? And why don't I have this tremendous sense of, wow, look at these sights? The bee is largely colorblind. The colors of the flowers are not for the bee. The bee is attracted by the sense of smell. The beautiful colors, the orchids, the daisies, the various lilacs, the shades and shades and shades, the 16 million shades of color. And I know that fact because Microsoft Word brags that in their color palette there are 16 million shades. But those tremendous spectrum of colors Hashem created for one reason, so that we should look out at this world and say, it's astonishingly beautiful, it's magnificent, it's breathtaking. And we're supposed to look out at the beauty of this world and have hana, have tremendous benefit and enjoyment, because that's why Hashem put it there. It didn't have to be there. The world could have functioned very well in black and white. But Hashem created a world replete with colors, with tastes, with sights, so that we human beings should have hana, we should have benefit, we should enjoy. And the question is, do we? And the bigger question is, why don't we? And why is it that we don't see it, enjoy it, take it in, and have constant, unending sense of, wow, this is astonishing, this world that Hashem created is beautiful. Why don't we enjoy it? But I think living in our current times is a far more pointed question to ask. If you know a little bit of American history, the king in the Revolutionary War period, the King of England was King George. There's a famous portrait of King George sitting on the throne. The King of England sitting there. The King of England is wearing the royal robe. The King of England is wearing the royal fur on top of the royal robe. The King of England is wearing a pelt on top of the fur, on top of the robe. The King of England is wearing another fur on top of the pelt, on top of the thick, heavy robe, and the man is very, very large. And you may wonder, why is the king wearing thick robes, heavy furs, pelts on top of those, sitting on his throne? And the answer is quite obvious, because in those days the way you heated up the palace was with a fireplace in the front of the room. And radiant heat is very efficient if you're right in front of it, but it only heats up what's in front of it. The back of the king was cold, so what does the king do? Turn around, now his back is now warm and his front is cold. You see, the king with the crown jewels could not heat up Buckingham Palace. It was freezing in the king's throne room. The King of England walked down dank, smelly, dark hallways at night. The King of England got into a bed of 36 inches of duck feathers. You know what happens to your spine when you settle into those 36 inches of feathers? And there are no chiropractors to put the king back together in the morning. The King of England rode in a horse-pulled wagon. 6 white steeds pulled his wagon. The wagon wheels were made of wood. Do you know what happens when you ride in the horse-drawn wagon with wood wheels on pothole-filled roads? The royal carriage goes, and the King of England goes, hour after hour. When the King of England had to ride to the Duke of France's wedding, he spent a week shaking, 8 hours a day. I drive a Toyota Camry. It's about as middle class, plain vanilla as you get in our world. Little me get into my car and I ride on air-cushioned suspension. My car rides smooth as glass. My car is heated. As a matter of fact, my car has 2 separate temperature controls. I like it a little bit cooler than does my wife. I set my side to 68, her side to 72. And if it gets a tad too chilly, I hit the button and my leather seats are heated. Pay careful attention to this. Who commissioned Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, the great symphonies, the great compositions of yesteryear? The kings, princes, nobility, because the only people who could commission and really hear that kind of music were the extremely wealthy, the nobility of the land. That means if you were in the top echelon, you got to hear the symphony orchestra played. If not, you didn't, period. Maybe you went to France, maybe once you went to Paris in your life and got to hear that kind of music, but the average man was completely sheltered, shut off from that world. I get into my Camry and I hit the CD button and I play Bach or Beethoven or Miami Boys or whatever I'm particularly into, and if I don't like it, click to the next one. Click to the next one, and if I don't like the balance, oh come on, add a little treble there, come on, a little amount of bass over there, the balance, shift the speakers, surround sound, 6 speakers. I have quality sound that the kings of England could never imitate in the best concert halls of their day. And what that means in plain language is that little me enjoys pleasures, comforts, and luxuries that kings of yesteryear couldn't imagine. If you look at the house of Rothschild, go back to the old Rothschild houses and look at your house, and I'll bet you your house is nicer than most of the Rothschild houses. We don't have a clue to the luxuries, the wealth that we enjoy today. The average tax-paying citizen in our world enjoys pleasures and luxuries that kings of yesteryear could not imagine or envision. And I'm not even talking about technology. I'm not even discussing GPSs, microwaves, computers, handheld telephones. I'm discussing the abundance, the plenty. The biggest problem we have in our day is there's just too much stuff. 65% of the US population is overweight. A huge percentage of them are obese. Go back 100 years. Look at a picture of people in this country 100 years ago, and you'll see that they were all rail thin. Rail thin. Why? Because they had better Weight Watchers courses, they had more exercise? No, it's really quite simple. No one had enough food to actually be fat. In Europe, many years ago, 100 years ago or so, a balbusser, a man who was corpulent, walked into shul and people stepped away. Ooh, that's a wealthy man. The only man who has enough money to eat far more than he needs to sustain himself must be tremendously rich, because the average person could not afford enough food. But that's not our world. No one we know, the lowest socioeconomic levels in our country, eats too much. In fact, it's the inverse. The lower down you are in the socioeconomic level, the greater the overweight, the greater obesity, because they can't afford the health food, they can't afford the Weight Watchers, they can't afford the exercise programs, they just eat McDonald's and whatever else is served. But no one goes hungry. And if you don't hear what I'm saying, I'll share one last thought. If you would like to understand the wealth, the extraordinary wealth that we enjoy, go to Walmart. Go to Walmart and look at floor to ceiling, hundreds of feet, aisle after aisle after aisle of goods, clothing, materials, possessions, anything that you need, and by and large we have enough money to buy it. My Rosh Hashivas, Tzal's Rebbitzin, grew up. She told me she had 2 dresses, a Shabbos dress and a weekday dress. I have girls, they don't own 2 dresses. Nowadays it's just an issue of racks and racks of clothing. I know a woman who has a 3-bedroom apartment. The 3rd bedroom she turned into a closet for her clothing with a dry cleaner rack that goes around. We're talking such abundance. Who do you know that doesn't have suits and shoes and clothing and shirts after shirts? I have in my closet, I hate to brag, I have more than 10, maybe 15 white shirts. So you say, so what? Big deal. You know what so big deal is? Fiddler on the Roof. Do you remember the song, If I Were a Rich Man? The symbol, the emblem of his being a wealthy man would be that he'd wear a new shirt every day. My shirts come from the cleaners, crisp, sharp. I put them on, and for your understanding, for your information, they look brand new. I have reached that epitome of wealth. But I'm certainly not a wealthy man. And we all have this. The average regular guy today has extraordinary wealth. And here's the punchline. Ask anyone you know the following question. Are you rich? Are you rich? I'm rich? Man, I'm not rich. I'm rich? I barely get a living. Come on, I can barely pay my mortgage and my kids' tuition. I'm not rich. And I guess if rich means richer than you, if rich means more money than other people, maybe you're right. But the reality is we are astonishingly wealthy. We enjoy luxuries that are beyond description. And here's the question. We live in a custom-designed world with such beauty, with such elegance, so many features that Hashem put into this world. We live in a generation where there's such abundance and luxuries. Here's the question. Why don't we enjoy it? Why is it that we don't wake up in the morning and say, wow, Baruch Hashem, to be alive. Look at the sights and colors and robins singing, grass growing, trees. Look at this magnificent world. And I live in this house with heat, with air conditioning, with indoor plumbing, with water that runs at the tap. I turn it and it goes on, hot or cold, and I get to mix it to hit the exact temperature that I like. It's astonishing. And the question is, why is it that we don't even feel it, we don't recognize it? And again, if you don't see it, if you don't recognize it, you might as well not have it. And the question I'd like to posit is, what's pshat? What's wrong? So you'll say to me, well, I guess we have to work on sensitizing ourselves. I guess we have to learn to appreciate these things. We have to focus on these things more. And to some extent you may be right. I suspect that to some extent that's true. And it's certainly a worthwhile activity. But I think there's a lot more that's going on here. And I think it cuts much deeper than that. I had a conversation with a fellow a number of years ago. He was on his way to being about tshuva. He was sort of betwixt and between. And he asked me the following question. He said, what I don't understand, what I can't understand, is why you would want to have kids. Why would you want to have children? Let me explain to you his question. He wasn't asking, because I want to run around and party, I want to spend all my money on myself, I don't want to share it. No, it wasn't his question. Far deeper. Why in the world would you bring kids? Why would you bring children into this world when this world is so ugly? It's so cruel. Why would you do that to a child? Why would you do it to an innocent kid just because you want a child? Because you want to have a family? Why would you bring a kid into this world when there's so much pain, there's so much suffering? Why would you do it to an innocent child? And this question plagued him. When he was on the college campus, before he began discovering Judaism, he asked everyone he could. He asked his professors. He asked everyone with some element of wisdom, and he couldn't get an answer. And he was still plagued by this question, why do it to an innocent kid? Okay, let's deal with that question. First, I want to tell you the wrong answer to that question. The wrong answer to that question is, the world is cruel, the world is rough, but it's worth it because this child has a chance to gain his world to come. He'll live in this world, he'll suffer, but what he'll accomplish is gain his eternity. And forever and ever, what he shapes himself into, what he molds himself into is what he'll be. So it's worth suffering the 70, 80 years because Gan Eden is forever and the world of eternity is so perfectly designed for man's benefit that it's worth it for him to go through this world for Gan Eden. That is 100% true. Absolutely emes, but it's the wrong answer to this question. Would you like to know the right answer to this question? The right answer to this question is that this young man didn't have a clue to understanding life. You see, if you live a life that's empty, meaningless, and purposeless, then life stinks. If you get up in the morning, make some money, spend that money, make some more money, spend that money, and then we die, then you're right. My answer to you is find a roof, jump off it, and end your misery here. But you know what's lacking? What's lacking is your understanding of life. If you understand that we were put here to grow, to accomplish, if you live a life of meaning, of purpose, and you live a life when you open your eyes in the morning and you focus on your accomplishments, your growth, what you can do to change yourself and change the world is beautiful. There's a simcha sachayim, there's a joy that comes over you because you're reaching your purpose in creation. Would you like to know the single most enjoyable activity that a human being will ever do? It's called growth, self-improvement. And you know why it's the most enjoyable thing that a human being ever engages in? For one reason, because that's what Hashem put us on the planet to do. Hashem created this world and gave us stage settings, gave us life settings, gave us the ability to grow, to accomplish, and that's the matara, that's the purpose, that's why we're here. And when a person changes himself, when a person grows, when a person accomplishes, there's a sense of joy, of happiness. There's a sense of, wow, life is beautiful. And the answer to this young man is, you don't understand life. From your version of life, if life ends in the grave, if we hit the grave and it's done and it's over, then you're right. Life is meaningless, life is purposeless, and you might as well find a bridge and jump off, and you shouldn't bring a child into this world. But if you understand life, and you understand life is about growing, accomplishing, and you're living a life that way, then life is beautiful. There's a simcha sachayim, there's a joy, there's a happiness. Two weeks ago, I was in Ottawa. I got to meet an old friend of mine, Rabbi Yehuda Symes. Rabbi Yehuda Symes learned in Chavetz Chaim Yeshiva for many years. He was a Musmach, became a Talmid Chacham, went out to Ottawa to teach in the day school. Last summer, Rabbi Symes and his family were driving. Near Syracuse, there was a deer in the road. Actually, his wife was driving. There was a deer in the road. She veered off to not hit the deer, and the van flipped over once, flipped over twice, ended off on the side of the road. And as Mrs. Symes describes it, she got out of that van, and her, I believe then 7 children got out, and as she described it, 8 nisim, 8 miracles. She was pregnant at the time, she was unhurt. Her children, one after another, came out, basically unscratched. One child had stitches in the head, but literally 8 miracles, each child safe, herself safe, and in fact she came to full-term birth with that child. 8 nisim. Rabbi Yehuda Symes was in the passenger seat, was not quite as lucky. They airlifted him from the crash. They didn't think he would survive. And in fact, today he is a quadriplegic. Cannot move his legs, cannot move his arms. I spoke in Ottawa Sunday night, and he came to the SHMUZ in his wheelchair. Okay? And we spoke afterwards. It was nice. And then I went over to his house, and we spoke for a few hours. And I want to share with you some of what he said to me. He said, as a quadriplegic living at home, one of my challenges was to find quality health care, to find people to come into the home and help me. Obviously he has certain needs, getting in, getting out, etc. And he said I couldn't understand it, because there are unfortunately many quadriplegics in North America. And for the longest time he couldn't figure out why is it that he couldn't find quality health care professionals to come to his house. And after asking for a long time, he found out the reason. Almost everyone with his condition, he has a C4, C5 cut in the spinal cord. That's so high up that almost everyone with that type of injury has to be hospitalized. But not because of the severity of the physical impairment, but because there's so much anger and so much depression that they cannot live at home. He couldn't find quality health care to come to his home because almost no quadriplegic in his condition remains in his home. They must be hospitalized because they're so angry, they're so depressed that they can't remain amongst their family. And then he said to me these words: I have no anger, I don't have depression. And you could see the simcha sachayim. We spoke for hours about life, about stuff, about learning, but there was a joy, a happiness, a real simcha sachayim. I don't have any other word to describe it. And I have to share with you, I was very humbled. For 30 years now, I've been learning this lesson called life settings. That Hashem meets out very specific life settings, but actors on the stage, Hashem gives us a script, and we're judged by one criteria. This is your role to play, how well did you play it? No one cares in Shemayim whether you're wealthy or poor, healthy or sick, whether you ran the marathon or you didn't. There's only one question they ask you. This was your potential, this was your stage setting, what did you do with it? I've lectured about that, I've taught that in high school, I wrote a book about it, I've discussed it for 30 years. And I was so humbled because I talk about it and this man is living it. Understanding that Hashem brought him to this position, that he was chosen and given this opportunity because he could transcend it, and you see that's exactly what he's doing. And there's a joy and a happiness. He's steiging, he's growing, he's accomplishing tremendous levels, and there's an inner happiness and an inner joy, and it's astonishing to watch. And he said to me one other thing: Baruch Hashem, I've improved a lot. And I thank Hashem every morning that I could breathe on my own and I could swallow on my own. See, typically that high up in the spinal cord, respiration and eating your own food is a big challenge. I thank Hashem every day that I could swallow. I thank Hashem every day that I could breathe on my own. And my friends, here's the thought. I have woken up every single morning of my life and I've been able to breathe and I've been able to swallow. Why is it that not once did I say, wow, lung full of air, wow, and I can swallow, wow, thank you Hashem. I don't even see it. It's not even in my radar screen. It's not even there. And would you like to know the fundamental reason? Because unless you're living a life of purpose, unless you're steiging, unless you're growing, you're not going to be happy, you're not going to be filled with joy, and then everything in the world, the greatest wealth, the greatest luxury, will not move you, will not affect you. It might as well not be there because you're not happy. And if you're not happy, you can't enjoy life, you can't celebrate life, you can't live a life as Hashem wants us to. We live in rather unique times. Never in the course of history has there been so much material abundance, wealth, freedom, opportunity. This is the ultimate arrival of man. We no longer suffer the Black Plague. There are no marauders. There's no caste system. Every human being in our society has freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of education, opportunity. You could lead your life exactly as you wish to lead your life. You want to be a lawyer, a doctor, an Indian chief? The world is out there. You can attain it. You could achieve it. You could live it. And in this unique, remarkable times that we live in, there are tens of millions of clinically depressed people. Tens of millions in the United States alone. There are only 300 million people in the whole country. And science now shares with us that only 16% of those cases have a significant attributable cause. You see, an attributable cause means a genetic predisposition towards depression. There is such a concept of depression running in a family. An attributable cause is if a woman is married for 30 years and a spouse dies, that's a very significant loss. That's a reason for depression. But a small percentage of the tens of millions of clinical depressions have such causes. The vast majority of them are whatever. No cause, no trauma, no loss of a loved one, not even a family predisposition, not even a genetic predisposition to depression. And you look around and you see the world depressed, down, empty, living a vacuous, unfulfilling life. Why is that? One simple reason. Hashem created the human being to grow, to accomplish, to change myself and change the world. Hashem took us from under the Kisei HaKavod, put us into this world to grow, to accomplish, to reach great heights. But if you don't understand life, if life is whatever, you get married and have a kid or two and whatever, you make some money and spend some money, and that's the purpose of life, let's party and go on vacation and whatever, then you wake up empty, you live a vacuous existence, you live a depressing, down, ugly life, and life stinks. Life is ugly, and you ask philosophical questions like, why bring a child into this ugly world? And there's only one hope. There's only one hope. And it's to lead life the way Hashem intended it. If you grow, if you accomplish, if you steig, there's a sense of happiness, a sense of joy. You wake up in the morning with a simchas achayim, and you love life. And when you love life, you could smell the aromas, you could see the beauty, you could taste the taste, and there's a tremendous amount of benefit and enjoyment that you derive from this world. And I believe that's exactly the answer to this Gemara. We give the chassan and kala a bracha under the chuppah. The bracha is lead a life of purpose. You're given a Torah to grow, to teach you how to accomplish worlds. If you lead that life as Hashem wants you to lead it, you'll have a life of happiness, of joy. Will you be like Adam and Chava in Gan Eden? Not always. Life will have its bumps, life will have its ups and downs, but you will have moments of bliss, of ecstasy, parallel to that of Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. The climate of your life will be joyful. The climate of your life will be happiness. And you will have peak moments, moments of extraordinary joy that is on the level of Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. This is not Gan Eden. We're not there. This world that we live in has suffering, has pain, and we can't give the chassan and kala a bracha of constant benefit and happiness as Adam and Chava did, but they can experience it, they can feel it. Maybe it's at the chuppah of your daughter, maybe it's your son's bar mitzvah, maybe it's at different points, but the point being, the bracha we give them is lead a life of purpose, lead a life of meaning, and you'll see that the world that Hashem created even now is so replete with benefits, so replete with various luxuries that you should and could lead a beautiful, happy existence, and even at times reach the level of Adam and Chava. And this is a very powerful concept, and I'll share with you why. This past February, I did the book tour in Israel. I was peddling, so I went to the various yeshivas, I went to the various seminaries, and it was a very, very profound experience. At one seminary, I was speaking, and I did SHMUZ number 24, Understanding Life Settings. Again, the same concept. Hashem gives us each a life setting, the perfect environment for our growth, our accomplishments, each one different, each one custom crafted for ourselves. Okay, I did the SHMUZ, When I'm done, I ask the various young women in the audience, does anyone have questions? One young woman raised her hand and says, well, Rabbi, I hear what you're saying. Hashem gives poverty or health or well-being because that's what the person needs. And philosophically, I can relate to that. But how could I apply it to my life when I'm in such pain? How could I live that? How could I think that when my life has such pain in it? I was a little surprised. And then I asked the next person a question. Rabbi, I hear what you're saying, but I'm in such pain. How could I apply that to my life? And then I asked the next girl. Rabbi, I hear what you're saying, but I'm so unhappy. How could I apply it? Out of 60 young women in that room, it seemed like 40 had the same question. I hear what you're saying, but my life is so difficult. How could I apply it to my life? And I was astonished. You see, these were regular young women who came from intact families, well-dressed. They looked very put together. Somebody's paying the $18,000, $19,000, $20,000 for their seminary expenses. They're not sleeping out on some park bench over there. And yet every one of them was suffering. And suffering so acutely that the only parallel I could think for it would be as follows. Imagine that you and I were speaking to a group of survivors in 1946. Imagine that we're speaking to concentration camp survivors. It's a year after the war, and we say to them, Rabosa, you got to rebuild. You have to build families. You have to rebuild the Klal Yisrael. You have to put your past behind you. You have to go on and take on the world again. That's what it felt like. That was like the audience I was talking to. But none of these girls went through that experience. Why am I sharing this with you? Because I believe that if you look out at the world today, you will see many, many unwholesome, unhealthy people. Many, many people, Rahman San, even in our own community, who are not happy, who are fundamentally not functioning well on an emotional, on a psychological basis. And there's an awful lot of suffering, an awful lot of pain. I speak to people all the time. People call me up. I guess because I don't charge, so I'm popular. But I get questions and issues and problems and sorrows all the time. And if I would share them with you, my wife hears half of them and she can't believe it. If I would share with you the pain, the suffering that the average person has, it's amazing. But the astonishing part is they all live in homes, they all dress, they're all able to pay their bills. They have every physical luxury imaginable, and they're so unwholesome, so unhealthy, so unhappy within them. Why do I mention that? Because every once in a while you hear people say, what do we need Mashiach for? I'm doing real good. I live in total freedom. I have great yeshivas. I send my kids to exactly the kind of yeshiva I want. I daven in the kind of Beis Medrash I want. I learn, I steig, I'm growing. Who needs Mashiach? Oh, it's nice, I'll pay some Mikdash, Karbanas, whatever. I don't need Mashiach. I'm doing well, my family's doing well, my community's doing well. I guess we're supposed to wait for Mashiach, but I sure don't know why. If you ever hear someone say those words, just tell them to look around. Look at the suffering, look at the pain, look at the unhappiness, and you'll very clearly understand why we need Mashiach. Forget other reasons which are very prominent and real. Just the pain, the suffering. And I want to share with you something profound that the Rambam tells us. People make a grave mistake about the times of Mashiach. Says the Rambam, Olam kiminhago noheg. The world will continue in the way of nature. You'll still go to work. You'll still take a seed and plant it in the ground. The world will continue as it has continued. Physically, there's almost no change from the moment before Mashiach comes to the moment after Mashiach comes. The one difference is Molei Haaretz Bei Hashem. The entire world gets it. The entire world sees Hashem. The entire world recognizes Hashem's presence, and that cognition changes everything. Gone is the competition. Gone is the lying, stealing, and cheating. I see Hashem right there. And I know that Hashem awards exactly that which the person needs. How could I steal when Hashem is watching me? But it's not a theory. It's not something I read about in SHMUZ. I feel it. And I sense Hashem's presence. How could I reach into His pocket when Hashem is watching? And that cognition changes everything. Because every human being understands that Hashem is present, and every human being understands why we're here. Every human being understands the value of a mitzvah, the changes it brings to me and to the world around me. The physical changes, the ruchnius changes. Every human being understands the damage wrought by an aveira. A sin damages me. It hurts me. I don't drink bleach. If you offered me $100, I would not drink a cup of bleach. As a matter of fact, if you offered me $1,000 to down one little Clorox bottle, I wouldn't do it. Because it's stupid. In Mashiach time, no one sins because it's self-inflicted damage. No one sins because it's foolish, it's stupid. I don't do heroin. Even if you tell me it looks attractive and it's wonderful, I see the damage and I'm not even tempted. That clarity of vision every human being has during Mashiach time. Mashiach comes like a brilliant sun, and midday everything lights up. And because of that, every human being enjoys tremendous happiness, sense of purpose and fulfillment, closeness to Hashem, the opportunity to daven, the opportunity to fulfill a mitzvah. Simcha fills the world because every human being understands why we're here. Every human being understands the value of a mitzvah, and there's a tremendous joy and happiness that pervades humanity. Physically nothing changes, but everything changes. And if you'd like a mushal, imagine that you worked for a man for 50 years and he's very wealthy and very appreciative. And he says to you, what I've done for you is, I've had my best carpenters, my best workmen build for you a mansion, here's the keys. And you go into this mansion and you understand the meticulous care that went into it, the most gorgeous upholsteries, the most exquisite carpets, the woodwork, the finery, the greatest portraits on the wall. There's only one problem. It's dark, pitch black, and there's no benefit that you enjoy from anything in there because it's so dark. And because it's so dark, you don't see the portraits, you don't see the couches, you don't see the beautiful upholsteries. It's pitch black and you benefit zero. And imagine that suddenly electricity is turned on and whoosh, in a moment you see it, it's gorgeous, it's magnificent. My friends, that's Mashiach times. Mashiach comes like the sun shining in midday. Every one of us understands life, we understand purpose, we understand why we're here, and we see the world in its glory and its beauty. Birds singing fill me with such joy. An ocean fills me with simcha. Trees and sights, flavors and aromas bring me such benefit. Do you know why? Because I'm happy. I share and enjoy a unique, positive, powerful sense of simchas achayim, enjoyment and happiness, and so I see the beauty of this world. It's certainly not the only reason to daven for Mashiach, and it's certainly not the only benefit, but if you're ever feeling who needs Mashiach, look at the pain, look at the suffering, look at the depression, look around in our community and our friends and the various people, and no one understands it's high time. It really is high time. You see, in the medieval days, a Jew understood why he needed Mashiach. When you watch your town being butchered, when you watch them come with pitchforks and shovels and chop up your neighbors, your family, and you cry out to Hashem, enough, enough, enough. It's been 1,000 years of exile. Hashem, it's enough. But we're not there. We're long after those days. We don't suffer physically. In our world, we don't even suffer anti-Semitism. But the pain, the depression, the unwholesomeness, the unhappy people abound. And they're right there. They're our friends, they're our family, maybe they're ourselves. And at a certain point, you have to see it, and you have to turn to Hashem and say, enough, enough. There's too much pain. It's now been almost 2,000 years. And it's not just bloodshed, it's not just Jewish body parts thrown into the street. It's far worse. Jews are falling apart. Rahman al-Islam, the pain, the suffering is beyond description. Hashem, enough, end it. Bring us finally to that time. Bring us to our land. This Gemara shares with us a tremendous concept. When you give a chassan and kala that bracha, it means you can enjoy, even in our life, even in this bitter, ugly exile, you could and should enjoy simcha. It's going to be spots. It's going to be moments. It's not constant because this is not Mashiach times, and it's certainly not a perfect world. But there should be joy, there should be happiness, and if you're living a life where you're growing, where you're accomplishing, if you're really reaching heights, there is a simchas hachayim, and you see the world, you enjoy the world, and it's something to focus on. But at a certain point, you have to recognize that life as we lead it isn't the way it's supposed to be. And that's a point that I'd like to close with. Very recently, the Klal Yisrael went through I don't know how to describe it, a 9/11 moment. In my adult life, I've not seen the type of galvanization, the type of everything stops and everyone, everywhere focuses on one event. I was in Ottawa and the guys in the Kola were talking and talked to people in Mexico. The whole Jewish nation is discussing Rahman al-Islam, this young Jewish boy, 8, almost 9-year-old boy, who was brutally murdered. And there's a lot to take from that. Number one, the fact that the Klal Yisrael is one nation. And the fact that thousands of people were out there on the streets. They stopped everything that they were doing. By the way, the emergency medical people never saw that type of outpouring. When a kid is lost, his community sometimes will come out. He'll have a dozen people. Maybe they'll get his church, there'll be 100 people. There were almost 3,000 people scouring the streets of Brooklyn. And throughout the Klal Yisrael, Tehillim rallies, it was the whole world stopped. The entire Jewish nation became one. And in that sense, it was a very heartening experience. But I think there's a particular lesson for us in this experience. And that lesson is that sometimes you experience things and you say, it's not supposed to happen. If you read about a Gentile serial killer who butchers a child, you're supposed to say, this is not normal. This is so abnormal. This is so out of the range of normal activity that something's going on here. But we're not dealing with some Gentile serial killer. When you're dealing with a member of the Klal Yisrael who does this, you have to stop and say, wait, it's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not normal. This is not the way of the world. And I think there is a very, very powerful message to us. When you see such an experience and you recognize how absurdly out of the norm it is, you can't even use adjectives because it's so outrageous that you just have to stop and say, it's not the way it's supposed to be. And that's the message. Life as we lead it now is not the way it's supposed to be. We, the Jewish nation, are supposed to be in our land. We, the Jewish nation, as one unit, are supposed to be dovek to Hashem, steiging and growing with beautiful midos, not acting nasty and selfish and whatever else I don't want to mention. We, the chosen, exalted people, are supposed to be unique amongst the nations. And a Gentile is supposed to look at a Jew and say, wow, I'm novan v'chacham. What a unique, special individual that person is. He must be a Jew. There's no other explanation for his sterling character traits, for his integrity, for his wisdom. And the message I believe that we're supposed to take is that life as we are leading it is not the way it's supposed to be. It's been a very, very long, bitter exile. They don't kill us in the streets anymore, but they kill us because we become acculturated, we become acclimated to the world that we live in. Their way becomes our way, and we've lost our identity, we've lost our understanding, we've lost that unique position of what a Jew is. It gets into our blood, it gets into our yeshivas, it gets into our entire spirit, and we're not leading life as we're supposed to. And I believe that at a certain point when you hear of an event like this and you experience something like this, you're supposed to turn to Hashem and you're supposed to say the words, Hashem, enough. We can't do it. It's been way, way too long. We don't have Nevi'im. We don't have a Beis HaMikdash. We don't have Asharas HaShechina. HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeem us, take us out of His land. It's been enough. There's enough pain. There's enough suffering. Hashem, end it. We can't do it. We'll try, we'll focus, we'll grow, but at the end of the day, we can't do it. 85% of our nation aren't frum. And whether we can or can't reach out to them, we're sure not doing it. Hashem, redeem us. Enough. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant us that hopefully even this Tisha B'Av will not be a day of mourning. It will be a day of celebration. May this be the very last time that we have to talk about these type of events. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeem us, bring us quickly to our land. Mashiach Tzidkenu.